Three, two, one, when you're ready.
Oh my gosh. Pete! This guy Joe emailed me again. He just goes on and on and on. It drives me crazy. I'm so mad. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to email him back right now. I'll tell you what. I'm going to take care of this. He's never doing this again.
Rand. You really think it's a good idea to just let your emotions make this decision for you right now? Hey, Rand. I think you're doing a little bit. I think you let your elephant get a hold of you a little bit in that one.
Yeah, I did. I'm doing better now, though. I will say that.
Okay.
I think I got to go back and watch the module on crushing imposter syndrome, and I think I need to review that a little bit.
Yeah, the elephant being kind of the limbic system, and your limbic system kind of got the better of you, and that actually happens. It's not that unusual.
My elephant was out of control.
It was out of control for a little bit, but you're back.
And that happens. It happens to people.
It happens to people.
Everybody.
And so I actually do think it's worth the time to take a look at how our emotions can sometimes get the better of us. And then is there a way to sort of I don't like to use the word regulate or suppress, because I don't really think that that's the way to think about it. But what I like to think about is just let that emotion come in, figure out what it is, and then deal with it, right? I call that processing emotions.
Yeah, it's kind of the secret weapon of unstoppable leaders. Yeah. And I think this is such a great topic because emotions can be... Boy, they can be the juice of life. Yeah. They can motivate you. They can keep you going through really, really hard times. Or they can just hijack your brain and make life and work feel miserable. This is such a great topic.
I sometimes think of it a little bit like, those dashboards that sometimes pop up, or those lights that sometimes pop up on your dashboard?
I'm very familiar with those. I think I have about 3 right now.
Well, those are there for a reason.
Yeah.
They're supposed... So...
I usually put tape over
them. That's not a good idea. So think about this metaphor for a second, because... The lights on a dashboard are similar to our emotions. If you think about it, what does a car do? What does a vehicle do? It gets you from where you are to where you want to be, right? And sometimes those lights pop up, and if they pop up, they're telling you something's going on with your vehicle.
Something's wrong.
It's going to inhibit you. It's going to stop you from being able to get where you want to go. Maybe your engine's going to blow up. Maybe your tire's a little low. Maybe you're out of gas. Maybe your oil is low. Maybe, there's things that you need to take care of. And if you don't take care of these things, you're not going to be able to get where you want to go.
It's such a good indicator analogy, right? And I'm looking at the oil gauge. Number 4, number 3, the low tire pressure.
Yeah.
Number 5, the check engine light.
Yeah.
Those are 3 frequent visitors to my vehicle and my engine. So it's telling me, hey, you have some stuff that you need to take care of. If you don't pay attention to this, you're going to have bigger issues down the road, right?
Yeah.
That's the analogy. All right. So Pete, everybody knows just kind of generally what emotions are, but let's go a little bit deeper, because you have a really interesting take, I think, on the definition of the word emotion.
Yeah, well, it's not so much my take, but it is, if you really break down the word to its Latin roots, not anytime, most of the time when a word starts with an E sound like that, what it means something about is out, even the word exit means out, right? Out. It means to, so in this context, in this phrase, the E means to draw out. Now just think about that for a second, because emotion, well, y'all know what motion means. Motion means to move, right? So that's kind of what an emotion is. An emotion is something that's happening inside your body that's supposed to draw out motion. Now think about that for a second. If you're really excited about something, that emotion should draw out very particular motion.
So it's a brain hack to get your body to move.
Yeah.
Or to get you to do something, respond to your environment.
Yeah.
That's what an emotion is.
That's emotion.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So remember from the imposter syndrome module, we talked about this guy here, Jonathan Haidt?
Oh, yeah. So we got the elephant as the limbic system.
Yep.
And then we got the rider as the thinking part of the brain.
Yeah, I got my handy model right here. So the limbic system
look around the brain. So the elephant is kind of taking over at times.
Yeah.
And that's when our emotions are controlling us and our thinking brain is not able to operate.
Yeah, for some reason, this part of the brain here that does all the planning and decision making and all that kind of stuff, that sort of shuts down when the elephant, the limbic system, takes over. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just one of those laws of nature that they just don't both work very well at the same time.
Well, if we're thinking about things and solving problems, we might not be paying attention to threats or paying attention to danger. So it's just our system built in, right, to help us pay attention to those things.
Yeah,
so it's good to kind of recall that analogy because that ties so well to this idea of emotion.
Yeah, and if you just kind of think about it, like just remember that the cerebral part of your brain, some people call it the cortical part, the cerebral cortex, something like that. That's like the rider on the elephant, right? And it can kind of direct the brain just a little bit here and there, can direct the whole body here and there. But the elephant is really the thing in our body. That's the limbic system. The elephant is really the thing that's really trying to like navigate threats and opportunities.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the emotions of unstoppable leaders.
Yeah.
These are the ones that give us energy. They're the juice of life. They're the ones that drive us.
Yeah.
They're the ones that we want to have operating most of the time in our brain.
Yeah.
So, of course, love and gratitude, curiosity, feeling passion for what you do, being determined to finish that plan, being flexible, as we talked in our last module about reflect and adjust, reflect and adjust. Expressing confidence and being cheerful on a daily basis, feeling healthy as a human being, and then having this sense of value or this sense of contribution. Those are all the things that we strive for as an unstoppable leader. But we know,
well, those things feel great.
Yeah.
And they have their own purpose, right?
Right.
They basically tell us that we're on track, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side of it, there are emotions that can sort of hijack your brain. Now, that doesn't mean those things are bad, but think about the first two on our list here, like discomfort or fear, right? Really, when you think about it.
So how do they hijack us?
Yeah, so think about that for a second. When we say it hijacks us, what we're saying is the limbic system is noticing something in the environment that could potentially be a threat. That's really what fear is.
Right. So we have a couple of other emotions like feeling hurt.
Yeah, so when I think about feeling hurt, I think about what that means is that it doesn't always mean this, right? But or it might mean slightly different things to different people. But what I think it means is that you're hurt because you lost something. Like there's something in your life that feels like you're missing. It's missing now, and it feels like you can't get it back, and so you feel hurt, right?
So you're suffering from a loss, which kind of hits your identity too.
Yeah,
right?
and it does, and really what that kind of reminds you is, like we said, this isn't necessarily bad. It's not bad to feel these things.
Right.
What you got to do is you got to recognize that that's what's going on, and then see if you can figure out, how do I deal with that hurt right now?
So it's not necessarily a bad emotion, but it's an emotion that could still hijack us from our thinking brain. And that could stop an unstoppable leader.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it definitely gets your attention, right? Like it does, to me anyway. Being hurt feels bad, and that gets my attention, and it says maybe we ought to try to see if we can figure out how to deal with this.
Well, let's take another one that could stop a unstoppable leader, right? And that's anger.
Yeah.
And I felt that a few minutes ago.
Okay, so think about anger. Anger is a really good one, because anger, what that generally means is that you feel that someone violated one of your rules.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I felt.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's your rule, right? And maybe it's a general rule of society, and they're breaking a general rule of society.
Could be my expectation, though. And that could be known to me and nobody else.
Yeah.
So I could be angry that somebody violated my expectation.
Yeah, well, whose fault is that, right?
And they might not even know that's my expectation.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So that's basically hurt, or that's anger, right?
And that could act as a barrier then to that relationship or how you interact with others. How about frustration?
Yeah, well, frustration, what that means is generally is like you're not making the progress as fast as you'd like to, or maybe you're not making any progress at all, or maybe you keep doing the same thing and you don't get the result that you're looking for. That's kind of what frustration feels like to me. It's like, come on, we got to get going here, but you're just not making the progress that you want to make.
So you're not feeling a win, and you're not getting any feedback that you're getting closer to your goal.
Yeah.
So you just start feeling this sense of frustration.
Yeah, and that's something that's kind of hijacking you, yes, but it's also getting your attention. It's saying, something's going on here. Maybe you got to take a look around your environment and start doing something different, because what you're doing is making you frustrated.
Now, you just said something that really resonated with me, and that is, it's getting your attention.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
It's designed to get your attention.
There you go. And the idea, hopefully, is that you can then step away from it just a little bit and use your rider, right?
Yeah.
Use the cerebral cortex part of your brain to solve the problem you're trying to solve.
I think sometimes we feel these emotions and we're not thinking about them as an opportunity to like redirect our brain. We're thinking about them as something bad.
Yeah, something bad is going on, right?
And
like
I don't like how
disappointment.
this feels. Like disappointment.
Yeah.
Like that feels bad. I just want to get rid of disappointment.
Yeah. Disappointment means things just didn't go the way that you wanted them to go, right? That's really all disappointment is.
Every time I go golfing, I experience a lot of that. Guilt.
You should practice a little more. But yeah, guilt. You know, guilt's an interesting one because what guilt means is that you feel like you violated one of your own rules. That's guilt. When you think about what that means, I feel guilty because here's these rules of society. And maybe they are rules of society, but maybe
My own
they're just
expectations.
right, your own expectations of yourself. You're like, oh, I'm better than that, right?
Yep.
And
So I violated my integrity.
yeah. You violated your own expectation. That's kind of what guilt is. And again, it's just a signal. It's getting your attention. It's telling you, hey, do it better.
How about inadequacy?
Yeah, inadequacy. You know, when I think about inadequacy, that's kind of like me looking around the world saying, I'm not as good as I need to be to get where I want to go.
Kind of that comparison
It is.
challenge,
And-
right? That we talked about, imposter syndrome.
And sometimes that's not a bad thing.
Right.
If you think about it, right? If you're feeling inadequate, but you actually are, and you do some reflection on that, well, that's probably not healthy, right?
Yeah, like I'm not working hard enough here,
Yeah.
and everybody else is killing it,
Yeah.
and I'm just kind of sloughing.
Yeah.
Like it's time for me to crank it up a notch.
Again, what's it trying to do? It's just trying to get your attention. It's just
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
not
say, hey,
bad.
yeah.
Okay. How
You're
about overloaded? I
Yeah.
feel overloaded.
Yeah. That just probably tells you might be trying to move too fast. You might be trying to do too much at once. So you're feeling overloaded because that's your body's way of saying, it's really your nervous system's way of saying, hey, I'm checking out the environment for you. You don't have to do it. Your elephant is checking out the environment for you. And it's saying, you can't do this. This is just too much.
I always think of this circus act of trying to juggle, right?
Yeah.
And you're juggling one thing here and juggling one thing here.
Yeah.
And you got plates spinning here. And I always think of that like metaphor when I feel overload. Like I'm trying to keep too many plates spinning.
That's right. Yeah, that's overloaded, right? How can you actually do it? It's hard.
How about loneliness?
Yeah, loneliness really, generally it kind of means, again, this is not a bad emotion. It's just an emotion that's telling your body, it's saying, look, you're kind of missing some connection in your life right now, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Like, you are not connected to enough people, or you haven't been connecting enough because we're built to connect.
Yeah.
And so loneliness is the indicator light for you need to get out
Yeah.
and build your social connections.
Yeah, just goes, I don't know, send some text out there. Maybe put a Facebook. I don't know exactly. I mean, I don't
for a
really
party.
Yeah, I don't really have this problem. I feel like I get kind of like bogged down on the other side of loneliness sometimes, like the
The
overloaded.
overloaded side.
Yeah, but that's because I have too many people in my family. Not too many people, but anyway.
Enough.
Enough. Plenty. I got plenty. So this is actually a really common response for a lot of people. In fact, not a lot of people. It's like 100% of the people. Everybody
Just
has
wired
emotions.
into our brain,
Yeah.
right?
It's there, when you think about it, it's there for a survival reason. And neuroscientists have a name for that part of the system. They call that the sympathetic nervous system. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Yeah. That's the system where your body just kind of gets upregulated,
Yeah.
right? Your heart rate increases.
High alert.
Your pupils dilate,
Yep.
and you are very alert of your surroundings
Yeah.
and what's going on.
You have to be.
Our brain's hardwired to do that.
Yeah, you have to be for survival, and you can't always be in that mode. That's too energetically expensive. You'd burn all your calories just worrying on what's around you, right?
Right.
But then you have the opposite side of that. You have a way to downregulate that, and that's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And I don't know if you ever heard of that one.
Yeah. No, I've heard of that. So that kind of brings your system back down.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
does the opposite essentially and brings you back down into more of a regulated or calm or regular state.
Yeah, some people call the sympathetic nervous system, they call that the fight or flight mechanism.
Oh, yeah.
And then the parasympathetic nervous system, they call that the rest and digest nervous system.
Yeah,
Just
that
kind of
makes sense.
relaxing and getting, back to normal.
Okay.
So we were just talking a few minutes ago off camera here about like how long do you think it takes to get out of that sympathetic flight or flight kind of state and then back down into something that's a little bit more normal so your cortex can take over?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends on the situation. But if it's something that isn't too stressful, then it might be as short as 60 seconds or as short as 90 seconds
Sure.
to kind of like get your brain back under control, right?
Yeah, and we both know that there's some trauma and some stress that people, they spend their whole life trying to get rid of, and they never actually, they never actually process through that.
Right. So it just kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah.
So what might be some tips or maybe even a brain hack for dealing with that when that sympathetic nervous system is just kind of taking off and exploding on you?
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of stuff, and one of the places that I got a lot of this information that I'm going to share right here is from this book right here. This is actually a friend of mine. His name is Harvey Martin. Well, that's not actually Harvey on the page there, but that's just some good-looking model that Harvey picked him. But anyway, Harvey wrote this book called Breathe, Focus, and Excel, and that's what he does. He generally works with athletes. In fact, I think at the moment he works with the San Francisco Giants baseball team, and I think he works with their pitchers about how to stay emotionally regulated so that you don't let your body kind of take over and hijack your ability to perform well on the field.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, because if you're in fight or flight, your breathing is going to be upregulated. Yeah. And so the system that brings that back down is also attached to the breathing. So if you focus on breathing as a strategy.
And we know we can do that. So do you have any breathing techniques that you use to kind of down-regulate your sympathetic nervous system at all?
So the one that was taught to my mom many, many years ago, I learned from her, is to just really slow breathing in through your nose, holding it for a few seconds, and then exhaling out your mouth.
Okay. So
and doing that 3 times.
Okay.
So if you feel really upset,
just
taking that really deep breath.
Yeah.
And just repeating that a few times. Yeah. And then that is a way to kind of bring that fight or flight down.
That technique actually works very well. And a lot of people kind of think, oh, that's too broad or too general. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try it. A lot of times at my workshops and seminars, I'll say, let's do this. Take what I call a body inventory. So what a body inventory is like you just ask people, you just say, okay, how do you feel right now? And most people say, oh, I feel just okay. So how do you feel right now?
I feel okay right now.
Okay, you don't feel awesome, you don't feel terrible.
Not awesome, but pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, okay, so if I said to you, let's just try doing that breathing technique, and if you're kind of watching this right now, just ask yourself, how do you feel in this moment? Maybe you feel terrible, maybe you're still asleep, maybe you're just trying to wake up, something like that. Or maybe you're stressed out about something, right? So just take a body inventory, just tell yourself, ask yourself, how do you feel? And let's just do this technique. So you can pause it, or you can just do it along with us, and we'll just go in through the nose, hold it, 2, 3, 4, out through the mouth. And you're going to do that 3 times. We'll wait for Randy to do that 3 times. And as he's kind of doing this, he's, I bet you a little bit, he's already starting to feel a little bit more relaxed.
I can feel my heart rate going down.
Yeah, isn't that weird? I sometimes will check on my watch and see if my heart rate goes down when I do that. Sure enough.
I have to tell you a quick story.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because
maybe we'll edit this out, maybe we won't.
I have this little thing that I do when I go to the doctor's office.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I have this, I call it a personal record.
Okay.
So when I go to the doctor's office, they take your blood pressure and they measure your pulse.
Yeah.
I use this breathing technique to manipulate my heart rate to see how low I can get it.
And how low have you been?
And I have been down to 60 for a pulse.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Sitting after going to the doctor's office, to get down to 60 for a pulse. And I got that idea from listening to an interview of a NASA astronaut that talked about how they use breathing exercises to control the feeling they have in their body when the rocket is on the launch pad, right? And so they use that to bring down their heart rate.
Yeah.
So anyhow, sorry, I got you off track.
If you're in the doctor's office, they're probably going to be like, get the crash cart over here. We're losing him.
He's going down. Mayday.
Okay. All right, so that's kind of breathing, and there's all kinds of things. I strongly recommend, if you haven't done, just go onto Amazon and get this book, and it's got all kinds of things in there, not just about breathing, it's about focus, it's about other things too, it's about massage and things like that. But the other thing that they talk a little bit about in this is your posture, just your general posture, not about you, but sometimes if I'm kind of slouched over and not really paying attention to what's going on, I just don't feel that good. But if I take an extra cautious look at what I'm doing, I throw my shoulders back just a little bit, trying to like pinch my shoulder blades together, and I just kind of hold my head at maybe not like a way up high level, but maybe not way down low either, just kind of like at a nice steady level, I usually feel pretty good about that.
It kind of helps you with breathing too, because when you're slumped over, it is really kind of hard to get a lung full of air or lungs full of air, and it's a little bit easier when you're sitting up straight.
Yeah.
And you have a clean, straight posture.
Another leadership tip on that, like if you're trying to convey like a feeling of I feel pretty good right now and I'm pretty confident in this, if you're trying to convey confidence like that, your posture is going to tell the people around you, just your body language is going to kind of communicate to them that you're feeling pretty good and you're confident in your ideas and your thoughts.
Yeah, that's such an important point too, because you are trying, as an unstoppable leader, you are trying to convey that confidence, and so that posture kind of parallels with that and makes you feel better at the same time physically.
Yeah. Well, there's other things you can do too, just even sometimes just smiling, right? Just your face, right? That's exactly right. Just smiling, it just makes you feel so different. I've actually read a study where there were people that were so depressed that they couldn't smile. They actually couldn't smile. And you're like, well, what do you mean you can't smile? They're like, we don't know how. We kind of forgot how to smile. So what they had to do is they trained these people to smile.
To practice smiling.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They're like, I can't even get my face to do it. I don't even know how to get my face to do it. They said this. They said, can you say the letter E? And people are like, what? I said, can you say the letter E? Well, yeah, I guess I can say the letter E. E. Well, that's not exactly smiling. I said,
it's a start.
It's a start. So you say the letter E. It's a start, right? And then you put a pen in your mouth. And you say the letter E. E. Now take your pen out. E. I'm smiling, right?
There it is.
And what they found is if they can get people to do that for just 2 minutes a day, it increased their mood. It helped with their mood.
Let some serotonin go in your brain and makes you happier. So just even practicing smiling, or be conscious of how much you smile. I notice at work, there are people who smile a lot, and there are people who never smile.
Right.
And it is telling as to what's going on in their head, what's going on in their brain.
Yeah, and I've had a few clients, like leadership clients, that are they're like dental companies, and they tell me like it is amazing. There are people that their teeth are so bad that they just don't smile because they don't want people to see their teeth, and they're like they think that actually affects their mood. So if they can fix their smile, it's going to fix their mood. It's going to change their whole life.
Wow, what a connection that is!
Yeah,
just helps them move away from that sadness, right? That they have.
And Harvey has other things in his book too about face, and actually one of the cool things in here is about facial massage, which is a very strange thing. When I first learned this, and I was kind of like reading his book, and he teaches you how to like massage your face in such a way that it just totally relaxes you. And one of his tips, basically, I got to take my glasses off for this, is just to take 2 fingers and start up in the corner of your eye and just kind of get to those muscles just underneath your eye. And I got to tell you, Rand, the first couple times I did this, I ended up doing it for like 3 weeks straight. And you know what? I got bruises under my eyes because I loved it so much. And it just felt so good to do that. And I was like, man, because I guess I don't know what it is, but those muscles just must never relax or something like that.
Well, massage is such an interesting thing, right?
General,
what it can do for your body, what it can do for your energy. One of my daughters is an avid horse rider. And what I learned from her is that horses actually massage each other's withers, which is that spot right behind the mane when they're stressed out in the herd. They've just been chased or whatever. They actually massage each other's withers, and it actually brings their stress level down in the horse's body. So it's something they do naturally. So maybe other animals use massage as well.
I think they probably do. In fact, Harvey kind of says this is not just a human thing, that a lot of animals do this. They have little tricks to sort of like self-soothe and bring that sympathetic nervous system down to a more regulated level. So now let's just kind of talk about so that's changing the body. Let's talk about changing the mind while I massage your withers.
There we go.
So it's kind of cool that you can change the way that you're feeling just by changing the way that you're standing, the way that you're holding your face, maybe even some of the words you're saying.
So doing something physical with your body can actually change your emotions. Could we do that now with your thoughts?
Yeah, our thoughts. What we're focusing on, I think, can have a lot to do with our emotions.
Right.
So the 15-minute framework, just get your stopwatch ready here.
Here we go.
This is our 15-minute framework here. 15-minute framework has to do with kind of reframing how we're looking at things and maybe even doing some different things.
So we call this the EMT, the Emotional Management Tool.
EMT, I like that. It's like you got an emergency.
Yep.
You got to have an EMT on hand. Okay, so it's an
Need the
emotional
EMTs.
management tool. Yeah, so basically it's just this kind of like step-by-step process, and we'll just kind of show you the process real quick, and then we'll kind of give you an example, and we'll show you how to use the actual tool that we have in the class here.
Okay, let's take a look.
I think the most important thing you start with is, sometimes when you just kind of feel lousy, so you got this, I guess I'd call it like a negative emotion or just like a negative action signal, like those things we talk about, being uncomfortable, being afraid, being angry, being hurt, those kinds of things. You just got to kind of figure out which one is it.
Because I could see sometimes they're really obvious.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm upset.
Yeah.
That's obvious. And other times maybe it's not so obvious.
Well,
I'm not sure what I'm feeling. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, and some people are a little less in touch with their emotions, and so they need a tool like this just to kind of reflect on.
Yeah, so I know I've talked to people who have said, my spouse says, I need to like get in touch with my emotions more because maybe they're just not really aware, or they don't have a sense of awareness of what this feels like or what feeling that is.
Yeah, if you think about like those little signals on your dashboard that's telling you that something is wrong.
Right.
Sometimes
The
it's just like
indicator lights.
it's just like a check engine light. And then what you have to do is you have to take it to a mechanic, or if you have a tool like I have, you just plug this right into your car, and it'll give you like a little signal, just like this is what's wrong and this is how you need to fix it. I wish we
So
had.
when the indicator light comes on,
Yeah.
you do a diagnostic,
Yeah.
and then it says, do this for
And
your
that's
car.
okay. What that first part of this tool is really all about.
Okay. So what might be causing the emotion then's the next step. The next question.
And usually, once you know what the emotion is, it's pretty easy to figure out. What's causing this emotion. Why am I frustrated? Well, I'm frustrated because I keep doing the same thing over and over again. I keep trying harder and harder, but I'm not really getting the result that I want.
Okay, so what would you do next then? What would be the next step?
So now I got to think about what I'm going to do about it, right?
What's your response?
Yeah, and really when you think about it, there's a lot of things you can do about anything, right? But really when you think about it, it comes down to this. There's really only two categories of things that you can do to change your emotions. And number one is, ask yourself this: is there something wrong with my procedural, how I'm going about things? Am I doing something wrong here?
Right. Am I doing something wrong? And then what do I do with that?
Yeah, like I might need to make a change. The other way you might want to handle this is just, you got to realize sometimes it's not something that you're doing wrong, but it's just like how you're looking at it. It's how you're perceiving a situation. And there are times when you just need to figure out kind of how to reframe what it is you're thinking about.
So just changing your perception can be a way of kind of getting that emotion under control.
Yeah, the way I say it is this: there's really only two things you can do: change your procedure or change your perception.
Ooh, that's good. That's sticky.
So now it really comes down to creating a plan, right?
Sure.
And so when we say create a plan, we talked all about creating a plan in the last module, but really what we mean is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to change your procedure? And that might mean you have to physically do some things,
Sure.
Maybe call some people, talk to somebody, something like that. Or are you going to, actually just relax for a little bit, think about it, reframe it. And either way, you're going to have to do a little bit of work, and we're going to show you how to do that in just a minute.
Now, I could see for some emotions, this is easier than others. Absolutely. Like if I'm angry, it's going to be tough for me to think about creating a plan in that moment.
Yeah.
But that's something I'm going to work toward.
Yeah, and the reality is, I think it's like anything, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it.
Right.
And that's kind of what we mean when we say create a new routine around this. So sometimes it might very well be the case that you're going to have some kind of an emotion that pops up. But the thing about it is, for a lot of people, is it pops up again and again and again. And sometimes it pops up around the same thing, like this person irritates me or something like that. And you say, well, wait a second. Is that person irritating you, or are you allowing yourself to become irritated by that person? And so what you have to do is you have to think about, how can I reframe that so that every time I see that person, I don't get irritated?
So much of the leadership journey is doing a lot of reframing of our thoughts.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so now this is taking those lessons and applying it to our emotions and helping us reframe our thoughts around our emotions.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the tool, and you can see exactly how to reframe your thoughts on this.
Okay, so one of the resources we'll have linked is this emotional management tool.
Yep.
So let's just go through a couple of these and see how we would reframe
Absolutely.
our brain around thinking about this indicator light, this indicator of this emotion.
Okay, so what one do you want to start with?
So how about we start with frustration?
Okay, so again, let's kind of go back to our step-by-step process. First thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what is the feeling? You know you're uncomfortable, you just don't exactly know why. So what is the feeling?
I don't feel like I'm making progress toward my goal.
Yep.
Okay, so that I'm feeling frustrated.
That's clearly frustrated. So now you've put a name on it, right? And once you name it, it becomes a whole lot easier to fight. Sometimes it's hard to fight something that you can't see or you don't exactly know what it is. But now you put a name on it. You say, okay, frustration, what's going on here is I'm clearly not seeing the progress, or I'm not seeing it as fast as I'd like to see.
So then I'm going to ask, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah. And so basically you kind of know right away what it is that you're frustrated about,
Sure.
But it's just a good idea to ask that question. What am I frustrated about? Well, I'm frustrated at work. I'm frustrated with my family. I'm frustrated with this. I'm frustrated with that. I'm frustrated with my physical health, right? So you kind of know what it is you're frustrated about.
So you're just trying to get clear about that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it's the next step is this a problem with something I'm doing? Or is this a problem with something I'm thinking? Is this a procedural problem, or is it a perception problem?
Okay, so you've identified, maybe it's a procedure, maybe it's a perception. You have identified that. Then what do you do?
Well, okay, so if it's it's the route that you take here depends on whether you've decided it's a procedural thing or a perceptual thing. So basically, if I realize that it is a procedural thing, which there's a good chance of that. There's a good chance that if things aren't going the way that you want them to go or going as fast as there's something that you're not doing or something you're doing too much of, and that's getting in the way of your, of your success. So what do you need to do as an individual? What do you need to do as a group? You take a very careful look at it and you start to lay out a new plan.
So maybe there's something about our process that is not really working.
Exactly.
And so we need to change our process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if this frustration is really a perceptual thing, then you have to kind of look at it different and you got to start to reframe your mind. You say, okay, maybe it actually is the case that we are trying to move too fast. Maybe we have to cut ourselves a little bit of slack here. I mean, not all things, Rome wasn't built in a day.
And we have to just trim it back a little bit because we set a goal that was too far out there.
Yeah, your expectations are too high.
Okay. So we'll readjust that. So let's pick another one. How about inadequacy?
Yeah, okay. So same thing. Maybe you're feeling weird and basically you're kind of feeling maybe a little bit of that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I don't really feel like up to the task.
Yeah. And so that's really when you think about what inadequacy is at its heart, at its root, that's really what inadequacy is. It's just not feeling up to the task.
So I have to unpack that a little bit and figure out why am I having that feeling?
Yeah, and it may be, again, because, something's going on at work where you're like, oh man, I'm not able to break through here. I'm not able to do what it is I'm trying to do. And maybe it really is the case that you don't have all the skills that you need, or you haven't developed the mindset that you need to move yourself or your team forward.
So what do I do next with that?
Okay, so again, you got to ask that same question. Is this procedural or is this perceptual? Do I have to change my procedure or do I have to change my perception?
So it's process or it's procedure or perceptual rather.
Yeah.
So I identify maybe it's process.
Yeah, maybe there's something that I'm not doing right. And maybe what it is, and a lot of times we kind of know this, maybe I'm not as prepared as I need to be.
Oh, yeah.
And I need to go get some education. Maybe there's a book that I need to find.
Maybe I don't have the right training and the things I'm being asked to do. I don't have the skills to actually do those things. And I feel that sense of inadequacy.
Yeah.
And so that becomes really clear then. I just need to acquire those skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And when you really think about it too, this is also something you can coach other people through. People come to you and they say, hey, I just don't feel like I'm up to this. And you say, okay, well, tell me why. And you kind of talk and you realize that they're just feeling a little bit inadequate, right? And so you say, okay, well, what makes you feel inadequate? What are some steps that you could take to make sure that you are up for the task?
that's just like the mechanic who's using that tool
Yeah.
to figure out, okay, if this indicator light's going off,
Yeah.
then we need to do this. So if somebody says, I feel inadequate, then you run these series of questions, and then you're diagnosing that emotion and that feeling and helping them figure out the plan for what they need to do next.
And if it is a perception, right? Sometimes it's, like we said, sometimes it is procedural, something you need to change, something you need to do. But if it is a perception, if it's something that you're just kind of looking at the wrong way, then maybe you really just need to, again, sort of in a certain sense, like cut yourself a little slack. Just know that everybody feels this way. So we did a whole thing a couple of modules ago, the whole imposter syndrome thing. Just kind of remind yourself, hey, right now I'm doing the best that I can with what I have in the situation that I'm in. And I'm going to cut myself a little slack. I'm not inadequate. I'm just a human being trying to, make it through my life.
Maybe you could go back and celebrate some wins. You could look at your leadership journey and really look at, honestly, like how far have you come on this journey? And so celebrate some of those wins. So working to change your perception of that inadequacy.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really good. Okay, so that's how you use the tool. And there's a number of different examples on here, but it's always great to also kind of come up with some of your own. And if there's some other emotions that you're thinking about or feeling, maybe you can work through this kind of format to lay out what you need to do next. So maybe it's time to wrap it up.
And like we always say, like if you really need some help with this stuff, that's kind of what we're here for.
Right.
You can just go to liftteams.com and you just go to our little, just go to the contact page. You get a hold of us or one of our team members, and we'll kind of help you work through some of this stuff. We'll coach you through this. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. It's a really good technique, and there's a whole lot into that framework. And one thing I sometimes think about is that, when we say, hey, look, you can either change what you're doing or you can change your perspective, that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so easy, Pete,
right.
to like just change your perspective. Just do it.
Just do it. It's like saying to somebody like, go fly that airplane.
Yeah,
well, how do I do that? Well, you just fly it.
Yeah,
Okay, it sounds like a
Okay, so we might need a little more help on
disaster.
how to change perspective.
Yeah, so one book I came across one time by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's an older book. I think this book is, I actually should look at the copyright. I can't look at the copyright. I love this book so much.
Can I see it? Where is the book?
Listen, every time I buy a copy of this book, I tell somebody, hey, you should read this book. And then I'm like, you know what? Here, just take my copy.
Right.
So it's a small book. I think I usually get it for pretty cheap. I don't have
actually
a copy. But I've read it a couple times. It's really good.
Okay.
And basically the idea is that if you can just make these 4 agreements with yourself, you're going to have just a larger overall perspective. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, maybe this would be a way of just kind of leveling out the roller coaster of emotions that represent life and keeping that ride a little bit smoother on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. And if you think about these things, like be impeccable with your word. I mean, you can read on the screen there, but essentially what it means is just have a lot of integrity, do what you say what you do. It just kind of like relaxes you a lot, or don't take things personally. It really is true that a lot of times when somebody kind of reacts to you in like a weird way, it's really more about them. It's about their stuff.
Yeah.
And they're kind of acting, they're angry, they're upset, but they're not really angry or upset with you, but they're just kind of taking it out on you. That does happen.
It's always a good lesson to remember to just not take things too personally in life, because I think we fall into that trap. It's really easy to do.
Yeah, I know I do.
Yeah, same here.
Another one is don't make assumptions. If you really think about it, a lot of times, I know you've never done this, but I do this on a regular basis.
I think I've done it.
I get very upset at something, and then I realize, oh my gosh, like I was upset at exactly the wrong thing, or there was no reason for me to be upset.
Well, it's a little egotistical too to think we actually know what's going on completely in somebody else's head.
Right.
And when we think we know what's going on, we make assumptions about why they do what they do. Yeah. And so we need to let go of that ego and release some of those assumptions that we're making and admit that we do actually not know what's going on in somebody else's head.
Most situations are very, very nuanced. Like sometimes I can tell you a little quick story. I have a very close person in my life who was painted in a certain way on a TV news story one time, and I'm like, that's not what happened at all. Like, I know for a fact that's not what happened, but the whole world now makes this assumption about this guy. And I'm like, that's just not fair. But I think, you know, the news does it because they do it so fast. And that's why we do it. You know, we want to make these quick assumptions really, really fast because it's easier, it's less brain space, and we can just make assumptions about people. But more often than not, we end up making the wrong decision and then kind of reacting in the wrong way.
Yeah, our brain's always seeking patterns, and we see what we think should be there. Yeah. And so it's really easy to get in that habit of making assumptions about others without even thinking about it. We do it unconsciously.
Yeah. The last one he talks about is always do your best. And really, I think about that in terms of, look, I know people put pressure on you to do this and that. You know, we put pressure on ourselves sometimes. And then it kind of makes us feel guilty when we don't live up to other people's expectations. So if you just make this quick promise to yourself, look, do your best. And if you say to yourself, hey, I'm always doing my best. And if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to need a little more out of you, you can say, well, you know, that's too bad because I'm already giving you my best. Like, I got nothing more to give, right? But, you know, I will wake up tomorrow and I will continue to give my best. And you should be really, really honest about that. You know, because I think a lot of people say, well, I'm trying my hardest. And you're like, are you really trying your hardest? You know, but I do think if you can promise yourself, you make this agreement with yourself, just always give your best effort, I think you'd be a lot happier.
Yeah, it's a lot like just getting really clear about what your expectations are for yourself and then working to those expectations on a daily basis.
That's a great way of saying it.
Okay, Pete, it's time to wrap it up again.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground here. I think we should just maybe talk about everything we talked about, and then we'll just kind of, you know, wrap it up.
And it's such an important element of Unstoppable Leader is to really have a deep sense of what those emotions do for us, right?
Yeah, they're tools. Actually, that's one thing we need to remember is that the emotions that we have are actually signals. They're supposed to be telling us something. Sometimes they go a little haywire. Sometimes the elephant gets a little bit out of control. And we can, by identifying that and recognizing that, we can actually have some sort of control that helps us move in the direction that we want to go.
And we need to practice knowing those emotions, because if we're going to get really good at interpreting those signals, we have to practice reflecting on those and thinking about what we can change. Do we change our perspective? Do we change our procedure? We have to really just work on identifying what those emotions are that we're feeling.
Yeah, it's not enough just to know that, hey, that we're feeling emotional right now. Like, we have to be able to identify, say, you know what, I'm actually feeling angry right now.
Right. Name it. To tame it.
Yeah, exactly. Name it to tame it. And that naming it really is, it takes some practice. And then once you name it and you understand it, you can start to use some of the other little tips and hacks we talked about. Specifically, sometimes just changing your physiology a little bit.
Changing our breathing. Changing our posture. Just some things that we can do physically to affect the emotions that we're feeling at that time, to physiologically change that emotion.
As soon as you said that, I felt my back stiffen up. I'm like, okay.
Sit up straight. Take a deep breath.
Super self-conscious of that. I think that that's actually a danger in this. Sometimes it's something to just kind of keep in mind, is you don't want to get overly conscious of this. You don't want to get self-conscious of this. Like, you want to be aware of things, and then basically what I kind of say to myself when I find myself dwelling in an emotion for too long is oftentimes I'll just say, you know what, this is part of being a human being, right? I mean, if we want to totally get rid of emotions, fine, but then we're probably not considered a human being anymore.
Right, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
So deep practice, we gave you a tool called the Emotional Management Tool. And so that tool is intended for you to be able to break down some of those feelings and really practice in a deep way.
Just sort of, I guess, in a way, sort of like practicing and eventually memorizing that when we're angry, what that really means is that we feel like someone in our life has broken a rule of ours. Or, you know, when we feel guilty, what that means, right, is we kind of practice this and then eventually memorize it. When we feel guilty, what that means is we probably have broken one of our own rules.
Yeah, so not only recognizing what the emotion is and being able to name it, but what is the effect of that emotion or what is the cause of that emotion, so we know what to do about that now.
Yeah, because that's the question, is what do you do about it? Do you change what you're doing? Do you change your procedure? Or maybe do you need to kind of shift the way that you're thinking about something, change your perception? So it's either change your procedure or change your perception.
And then you talked about the 4 agreements
Yeah.
as another way to kind of smooth out the emotional roller coaster that we can experience through life so we can have a little smoother ride on a daily, weekly basis.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you get a hold of that resource because it is a really good book. I'd love to send you one, but I've given away all my copies.
He doesn't have a copy, so. Well, it's always great to end with a quote.
Yeah, let's end with
so
a
we
good
have
one.
Dr. Mavis Mazura from the city of Johannesburg in South Africa, and she is an international personal business leadership coach.
And she really specializes in emotions and emotional processing.
Yeah, she's written and spoken at lots of conferences, but has some deep experience with emotional intelligence and how that impacts leaders.
Okay.
So that they can become the leaders they were meant to be.
Yeah. So I love this quote she says here. She says, emotions can get in the way or they can get you on your way. It's like when you understand what these emotions are, that these signals are actually telling you to do something. And if you're going to just be emotional, like I seem to remember before today, you got very emotional about an email that Joe sent you.
Yeah, that was like a bad moment. And we have lots of those.
Yeah.
But it's just an opportunity to really work on using emotions as an indicator of what's going on in your brain and figure out what to do next.
That sounds like a good way to wrap this thing up.
So what's amazing about this statement is that I feel like this is a summary of our whole thing that we just did in one sentence.
Yeah.
That's how talented she is.
we should have probably started with this and saved everybody a lot of time. But I do think that the tool, the EMT, the emotional management tool, is very useful. So if nothing else, you got one good tool, and that's what you need to become unstoppable.